Hello, it's April 7th, 2021. It is 13 degrees Celsius or 55.4 degrees Fahrenheit today, and I'd like to welcome you to my backyard garden. All right, well, let's start with the seedlings. So, these are peppers, and I started most of my peppers back in January this year. I started them on a seed mat, or heat mat, with a grow light. They were originally started in containers that were this size, so just the small squares for a container. And then I found these things this year, and they're just fabulous. So look at the size of this. It's got a great little root run on it, so that I can just transplant them into here. They can stay in here until I need to transplant them out into the garden, which is a long time if you're going to be keeping plants inside from like January till June. It takes up a lot of space. So this has been a great find for me this year. Rather than putting them into like individual containers like this, which I used to do, like that takes up a lot more space than this does. So if you can find these things, guys, I highly recommend them. This is my first year using them, and it's been such a dream. It's also really easy to move stuff in and out. So when I had all my stuff in containers like this, I'd put them on a cookie sheet and like bring them outside, empty the cookie sheet, bring them back inside at the end of the day when the sun was like going down and it was getting cool. This is just super easy. I just grab them and go. Yeah, that is the little greenhouse that I bring things out into. It's actually too warm right now to put peppers and tomatoes into that greenhouse. They would fry. So everything's just sitting outside. These are my tomatoes, also grown from seed. Started a little bit later than the peppers. I started my tomatoes in February. I've got basil. So this is just your classic Genovese basil. And then this one here with the curly kind of funny leaf is called lettuce leaf basil. And the leaves on this will get about the same size as this pepper plant. They get quite large. And then in the back is a purple basil. I've got a rosemary that I started from seed in this pot. Rosemary won't overwinter in our area. Zone 6A is just too cold. It doesn't make it. Though I might try, because rosemary and lavender are similar. And my lavender did make it. So, and that wasn't covered. I didn't cover my lavender. But things to try for next year. Okay, we've got more seeds starting in here. Look at this. These are actually potato seeds. So with things being the way they are, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get seed potatoes. So I got seeds for potatoes, which was kind of cool. They've germinated. They're really tiny. I don't know what kind of plant you would get off of that, or like when I should have started them. It's just a learning curve this year. Behind it I've got hibiscus, so I'm planning to put those in pots and put them out in my front yard, because I will have to bring them in once it gets cooler. So again, never grown hibiscus before, giving it a try. And then I've got my brassicas, so some Brussels sprouts. These were cauliflower. I just planted a bunch of them out in the garden yesterday. I've got some broccolis, and what are these? Cabbage. I did plant a couple of cabbages out in the garden yesterday. Oh, and these are artichoke. I just threw some in on a whim. The seed was kind of old, and I thought, well, let's just see what happens. I grew artichokes a couple years ago, and I was successful. They say they need 120 hours of, it's basically like vernalization, so you leave them out between 0 and 10 degrees, and that will encourage it to flower in its first year to produce chokes. Otherwise, they want to grow the first year, produce artichokes the second year, and in our zone, 6A, you can't overwinter them, they will die. So if you start them from seeds, make sure they're getting 120 hours of between 0, preferably 1, you don't want to push it to 0, 1 and 10 degrees Celsius weather. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but we can check that later. These are looking a little sad. This is where my tomatoes started, so I start them in here and then transplant them on into the individual little things that I did the peppers in. Those ones are looking really healthy and fabulous. These ones are looking like they've been forgotten. But I am hanging on to them just in case. And actually I think today what I might do is put these guys into some pots like these ones. Maybe I'll even just give them away at the end of my driveway once I get things planted. Just, you know, something to do. Okay, let's head over to the beds because I want to show you some very cool stuff. My spinach overwintered. So I didn't cover this spinach. I didn't put a blanket on it. I didn't do anything to it. And it totally overwintered and is looking fabulous right now. So that was a really cool bonus. I didn't know that would happen. You can see in behind there that my chives are coming in. Chives are one of your first to show up in the spring. We did put our rain barrels back in. You want to take your rain barrels out in the wintertime because you don't want the water inside to freeze, which will mess up the little spigots and crack your rain barrel. Oh, also these guys, see? Trellising. Last year I grew squash up them. This year I'm going to grow my tomatoes on this side. And then along the fence here, I believe I have planned beans. And then, oh, see that thing? That is for solitary bees. Actually, I'll show you. It came from Lee Valley. I do want to encourage pollinators in the garden, so this is from Lee Valley. It's on an angle like this to keep rainwater out of it. And yeah, it's supposed to be for solitary bees. And apparently the pattern that is on it also attracts them. So we'll see. I'll keep you updated throughout the growing season on that. The chicory survived the winter and is coming back. I quite like chicory. It is bitter. If you're not into bitter dandelion greens, don't grow it. Grow stuff that you're going to eat. But I enjoyed chicory, so I'm pretty excited that those overwintered. And on this side, this was cilantro that I had planted again last September. And they were tiny, and I thought, well, that's that. We didn't get a crop of them before it snowed. And ta-da! I've got a lovely crop of cilantro that's coming up right now, which is great. My sage also survived. There's some winter damage. This one doesn't look very good, but I'll just prune him back after. The rest of them look totally fine. Okay, moving on. This row I covered. So I put in wooden spikes and I covered it with poly tarp for the winter. Nothing fancy. It was literally like sticks that were in these holes. And then yeah, just stapled some plastic over it. So this is bok choy. It survived. It's totally edible right now. I'm eating these little heads like baby broccoli almost. Part of the reason, part of the reason I'm leaving these is because they're for pollinators. So it's a source of food early on for things that are looking for food. And also, I'm not adverse to collecting some bok choy seed off of it, should I get some. And we'll try that. I do have some radish in here, overwintered. And again, they will produce some like radish seeds, which are like little pods that you can pop off and eat. They say they're really good with beer. I'm a fan of beer, so I will try it. Turnips, same thing. I've let them go to seed so that I'm feeding pollinators that happen to be zipping around in this type of weather. I have garlic over here that was planted in the fall. So you plant your bulbs in the fall and then you just wait. And I'm really impressed. I've never been able to grow garlic. I had an allotment, like a rented space, and I never grew garlic there, but I always wanted to. So this is my very first garlic crop, you guys, and I'm excited about it. I have some Swiss chard that also survived the winter and is looking quite lovely now, red and yellow. And green onions. These green onions survived the winter as well and have really shot up since the spring. In my raised beds, oh yeah, see the snakes? Here's a tip for you guys. As long as you move them around, I've got some in this bed too, move them around every day, this will discourage the squirrels from digging in your beds, because the squirrels tend to dig. Like yesterday I planted all these tiny little green onions, and if a squirrel got in here and ripped at that, it would do a lot of damage. So I put the snakes in and move them around daily. I'm out here daily anyways, and it helps keep the squirrels out of your beds. Okay, so these are cauliflower. I just put a couple of them in. Started them from seed in February, I believe. Maybe it was March. I don't really remember. But yes, it's not too warm or too cold for cauliflower. This is a good time for cauliflower. I also, like I said, put my green onions in this bed yesterday. Actually, not green, sorry, these are Spanish onions. I have some carrots that overwintered. However, they are split. You see that? I'm sure you could still use them in like a soup or something if you wanted to. I'm not quite that desperate, but I was also kind of hoping, this was an experiment. I wanted to see if they would survive, one, and two, I want to see if I can get them to go to flower this year. If I can get some carrot flower seeds. Beside it, this is tatsoi. It's also a really cold tolerant green, so I grew those through the winter, and they aren't getting very big, but they are still alive. And I'll zip around here so you can see it better. Arugula. I also really like arugula. This is almost wild. See the variegatedness of it? Whereas quite often arugula looks like this. It's much rounder. So I'm not sure if this just kind of was another seed that was a bit of a wild seed, or if it went wild because it survived the winter. Don't really know. Either way, it's peppery and delicious, so you can keep rocking all winter in Zone 6A. Alright, that's just a quick tour around the garden. Oh, this stuff here in between the two is mushroom compost. There's a mushroom factory not too far away from us. So this was a new bed right down the middle. Kind of like these. I had a bed, and then we ripped up the middle part. So yeah, I just threw some mushroom compost on top of what was soil where the grass was. We skimmed the grass, and then I just threw mushroom compost on. And that is all I'm going to do to it. I'm just going to plant into that. Trying to do that whole no dig, don't disturb the microorganisms in the soil system. Oh, and that is Stan, my kitty cat. You want to say hi, Stan? Stan's an old man. He's like 18 now. But you may see him in our videos. Alright, well, that's everything. Okay, well, I guess that's everything for today. Just kind of wanted to give you a quick tour of what survived the winter, what I've planted, and what I'm growing to plant out soon. So I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to like, subscribe, share with your friends. We'd appreciate it.